In the Middle Ages, a new civilization was forged on the European continent. Nobles and kings, faith and warfare, culture and learning, trade and innovation. These set the foundations of the modern era. This is the story of how Europe was born. In the first 2 centuries CE, the vast Roman Empire engulfed the Mediterranean Sea. It was a time of stability, prosperity, and peace, the Pax Romana. Citizens enjoyed its flourishing culture, fair quality of life, and relative security. This was achieved through Rome's centralized government and advanced infrastructure. In the remote eastern margins of the empire, a new religion was born, Christianity. Beginning as a small Jewish sect, it slowly spread throughout the pagan Roman world. In the 4th century, it was embraced by the emperors, becoming the official state religion. But by then, Rome's glory days were over. The empire was suffering from inflation, plagues, famine, and invasions. Managing it from a single center was becoming impossible. In 395 CE, the empire was divided in 2. A Western empire with Rome as its capital, and an Eastern one ruled from Constantinople, also known as the Byzantine Empire. While the East was urban, rich, and prosperous, the West was rural, poor, and weak. It didn't last long. In the deep forests beyond the empire's borders, barbarian peoples were on the move. These were mostly Germanic tribes led by warlords and their loyal bands of warriors. These groups were pressing harder and harder on the Rhine and Danube rivers. Without much choice, the Western Empire began allowing them entry. Eventually, the frontiers were breached, enabling various peoples to migrate and settle within the borders of the empire. Whether guests or invaders, these peoples carved up Roman territory while imperial authority was crumbling. In 476, the barbarian leader Odoacer deposed the last emperor of the Western Roman Empire, Romulus Augustulus. This child emperor had no real power, but his removal stands as a milestone.
Empire crumbles.
The Western Roman Empire was no more.
What comes next?
The so-called Dark Ages had begun. Romans, Christians, barbarians. These were the 3 main ingredients that combined to create medieval Europe. The peninsula fell prey to new invaders, the Lombards.
Our armies will restore
the Byzantines had to accept that the division between East and West was
Forward!
final.
The peninsula is ours!
But soon they had to acknowledge yet another division, this time between North and South. In the 7th century, Arab armies swept through the Middle East and North Africa with astonishing speed, creating an immense Islamic caliphate. Where one civilization once thrived,
the Arab
now
conquest
there were 3,
swept like a whirlwind
Islamic,
across the ancient
Byzantine,
world.
and medieval.
Cavalry
For a
columns
brief
advanced
moment in
with
the 8th
astonishing
century,
speed,
it
banners
seemed
high,
as if the
forging a
fragile and
new
weak
era.
West might be overwhelmed by the caliphate. Muslim armies crushed the Visigothic kingdom in Spain, then went on to raid Francia. But in 732, in the Battle of Tours, they were defeated by the Franks under the leadership of Charles Martel. Islamic expansion in the West was halted, and the victorious Charles gave his name to a dynasty that was to change European history forever.
Hold the line!
Charles Martel's
Carolingians.
stand at Tours halted the invasion.
These formed the bedrock of medieval civilization.
My nobles and clergy, we stand at a crossroads.
The Carolingian Empire
Let us
was
forge a united
short-lived.
realm where
The
justice and
attempt to
faith
create
guide
centralized
our
rule in
path
the
forward.
West suffered from insufficient infrastructure. Small cities, weak economy, limited bureaucracy, and poor communications. After Charlemagne's death,
I am the
his 3
firstborn.
grandsons fought one another.
The empire
and in
must
843,
stay whole.
in the Treaty of Verdun,
You crave
divided
power,
the Frankish
not unity,
Empire
brother.
among
An
themselves.
iron puppet!
In
The Middle
843,
Kingdom quickly
the
diminished,
grandsons of Charlemagne
leaving
gathered
only
to
West
sign the
Francia,
Treaty
which
of
would
Verdun.
eventually become France,
Their faces
and East
betrayed the
Francia,
rivalry
which will
that
one
would
day
shape
become
Europe's
Germany.
future.
These kingdoms continued to splinter and fragment, a process accelerated by external
These maps
pressure.
prove the eastern lands are ours by
In the
ancient right.
9th
Ancient,
and
your
10th
claims are as
centuries,
fractured as
a
these
new
walls.
wave of invaders attacked the crumbling Carolingian world from every direction. The Vikings came from the north, roaming the coasts and rivers of Europe, raiding and terrorizing the population. The Magyars, better known as Hungarians, rode in from the east, plundering defenseless settlements. And finally, Muslim pirates and raiders landed on Europe's southern shores. Europe was under siege.
Forward! Take the village!
As the West was crumbling under repeated attacks, kings lost their power while local elites grew stronger. Europe was getting covered with a dense network of wooden castles serving as fortified residences of local noble families.
Present your tributes to your lord.
From these strongholds, lords subjugated the peasants in their vicinity, extracting their resources.
See to it with haste.
Lords ruled their lands by coercive
Kneel
force.
before your lord and render
In
what
previous
is owed.
centuries, peasants were an
Harvest
integral
my right.
part of infantry armies.
Vanquish the princes.
But new military innovations, such as the stirrup, further established cavalry as a decisive force. This new kind of warfare required resources only nobles could obtain. Consequently, European elites became full-time professional fighters. In a world ruled by a warrior nobility, territorial power was attained by vassalage.
By this
One noble
token,
granted
I
another
invest thee
land
with
and
these
protection,
lands.
and expected
I
in
accept
return
this
his
charge
fealty
with
and
loyalty.
military service. Kingdoms were becoming complex networks of personal relationships and mutual obligations. Kings were often weak and could be easily overshadowed by their strong vassals. This is often described as the feudal system. Centuries would pass before centralized states would emerge again in the West.
From an
It was later known as the Holy Roman Empire. After centuries of turmoil, Europe was finally gaining stability and confidence, ready to change course. The year 1000 marks a turning point in European history, ushering in 300 years of growth and prosperity. Better climate, combined with new technologies and techniques, led to an agricultural revolution. Europeans produced more food, resulting in population growth. New villages and towns were established, and existing ones expanded. Throughout Europe, forests were cleared as more and more land came under culture. During the Central Middle Ages, aristocrats from the Carolingian heartland conquered and colonized
Carolingian
new
nobles lead
territories,
families
pushing
through
the
frontier
boundaries
woodlands,
of Western
establishing new
Christendom.
outposts.
This
Their
process,
resolute gazes
described
and
as the
upright postures embody
Europeanization
the
of
era's
Europe,
spirit of exploration.
resulted
A
in
new
an
civilization
expanded and more
expands.
homogeneous civilization.
From this
In
vantage, William the
1066,
Conqueror surveys
William
his
the
growing
Conqueror,
dominion
Duke of
with
Normandy,
unyielding resolve.
invaded England.
The
In the
Norman
Battle of
England!
Hastings, he delivered a decisive blow to the Anglo-Saxons.
Blow shields
England
in
was
charge.
transformed into a Norman stronghold. In Iberia, the Christian kingdoms of the north fought the Muslims to their south, gradually extending their control over the peninsula. This was viewed as a reconquest. In southern Italy and Sicily, Norman warriors conquered vast territories from the Byzantines and Muslims. They allied with the Pope and established another Norman kingdom. In Eastern Europe, German aristocrats and peasants gradually moved eastward, settling on Slavic lands. But Europeans were casting their gaze further still. In 1095, Pope Urban II called on Christian warriors to
slow.
liberate Jerusalem and other holy
Rise,
sites
warriors of
from the
Christ.
hands of Muslim infidels.
Take up the cross and reclaim the
Crusader
legions.
armies swarmed to the
Go
east,
forth with God.
establishing several states on the shores of the Mediterranean Sea. These states proved to be a weak Western outpost. Over the course of 200 years, they were reconquered by Muslim forces. Nevertheless, they signaled an important message. The Catholic Church had awakened. In the early Middle Ages, the Pope was weak, holding little influence outside Italy. The Church was a loose network of priests and monks, appointed and controlled by local aristocrats. In the 10th and 11th centuries, a movement emerged set on reforming the Church and society as a whole. The reformers demanded to free the Church from the world, to extract it from the influence of kings and nobles, and rebuild it as a papal monarch.
No more corruption! We
Pope Gregory VII,
Free
an
the church's
enthusiastic
worldly
reformer,
influence. Our
clashed
resolves
with the
are
Holy
strengthened.
Roman
We
Emperor
will
Henry
prevail.
IV over the authority of appointing bishops in the empire. The first round of conflict ended with Henry waiting for 3 days in the snow outside a fortress at Canossa, begging for the Pope's forgiveness. The second round, however, ended as Henry invaded and appointed his own Pope, forcing Gregory into exile. Although it seemed as if the Emperor had won, in the 12th century it
Gregory
became
of
clear
Exiles.
that the papacy and the
I
Reform
type
were
my
victorious.
Papal.
The Church had become a
In the
robust,
vast papal
centralized,
hall,
hierarchical
symbols of
organization
reform gained
with elaborate
strength.
administrative
The
and legal
doctrines destroyed
systems
and
and immense
faith-based spirit
resources.
fixed
Its power
triumph.
stretched across Europe. At the top of the pyramid was the Pope, ruling the Church as an absolute monarch. As popes grew stronger, kings were left envious. Then they followed suit. The power of medieval kings was constrained by the armed aristocracy. During the Central Middle Ages, their numbers vastly increased, and castles were multiplying, with wood being replaced by stone and designs getting bigger and stronger. Aristocratic lifestyle and culture underwent refinement with the advent of the Christian knight ideal and the code of conduct known as chivalry. But at the same time, aristocrats in some regions were faced with the emergence of stronger kings and kingdoms. In England, the Anglo-Norman dynasty formed a small and consolidated state, free of the feudal mess abundant on the
Nobles,
continent.
behold our conquered lands. We shall
In
fortify and
Iberia,
expand.
the reconquest
The
of
royal
land
domain
from
will
the
grow.
Muslims
Unity
strengthened
ends
the
ourselves.
Christian kings,
Swear your
enabling
fealty now.
centralized states to emerge. In France, the kings of the Capetian dynasty gradually expanded their personal domains, enabling a functioning state to form there as well. However, in the Holy Roman Empire, the exact opposite occurred. The once mighty empire disintegrated, forming a mosaic of autonomous principalities. Emperor Frederick Barbarossa attempted to restore the empire's former glory, but failed. The title of emperor, now bestowed by electors, became an empty one. The Central Middle Ages saw an agricultural revolution, urbanization,
must restore order to the
expansion,
empire.
stronger popes,
Let this
stronger
council
kings,
act
and
with
vibrant
resolve.
culture. But around 1300,
This is
the
not
climate
the end.
worsened, growth halted, and famine spread. A great calamity was approaching. The 14th century marks a watershed in European history. In 1347, a global plague now known
The
as the
year is
Black Death
1347.
reached Europe.
A silent
It
killer
rapidly
arrives
spread
in a
across the
European
continent,
port,
and within a
carried
few
by
short
rats in
years
the holds
killed
of ships.
approximately one-third of the
Cursed
population. It was an unprecedented demographic disaster. Entire settlements were wiped off the map. Recurrent outbreaks of the plague would continue striking Europe for centuries. However, in the late 14th and 15th centuries, gunpowder transformed European warfare. The bravest knight could be shut down by simple infantrymen
From
from a
these
distance,
ancient texts,
and the most
a new
fortified
light
castle could be
dawns
breached
upon
with
us.
cannons. Supporting the
emerge
new
from
infantry
darkness
and
into a
artillery
new era
armies
of
was a
knowledge.
costly affair, which only kings could manage. As they strove to monopolize the use of force within their territories, kings consolidated their power and asserted their authority over the aristocracy. These nobles, who lost their military superiority, began serving their rulers as administrators and courtiers. The sovereign state was emerging. In these troubled times,
But no
Europe's
foe
new
arms
military
trade
innovations
without our
were
refrain.
constantly put to the test.
Our destiny awaits.
The 100 Years' War waged between England and France devastated the French countryside. The war's course was reversed by a peasant girl, Joan of Arc, who rallied French troops against the English. Eventually, England was pushed out of France. In Iberia, the marriage marriage of Ferdinand of Aragon
The
and
100 Years'
Isabella
War
of
left a
Castile
trail of
led
destruction
to the
across
emergence of a
France.
unified Spain.
Villages burned,
Their
churches in
combined
ruins,
armies conquered
fields
Granada,
abandoned to weeds.
the last Muslim stronghold in the peninsula. These
These
developments lay the foundations for the modern
Oh,
nation-states of England, France, and Spain. Other regions, such as Germany and Italy, would have to wait several centuries for their unification.
At the vanguard, Ferdinand and Isabella embody the Reconquista's drive for unity and power.
As the Middle Ages came to a close, Europe had not only recovered from the crisis brought by the Black Plague, but had also rebuilt itself on strong foundations. Gradually, its focus shifted outward. By 1500, Portugal had traversed Africa and the Indian Ocean, opening up commercial routes to the Far East, while Spain turned westward, crossing the Atlantic Ocean and reaching the Americas. Columbus's voyage in 1492 is sometimes considered to mark the end of the Middle Ages and the beginning of the modern era. Over the next centuries, European expansion would transform the globe and create the modern world we live in today.